Somewhere between the noise and the numbness, you lost the ability to think clearly. Not all at once. Gradually, the way a fire dies, not in one dramatic extinction, but in the slow surrender of ember after ember until what remains is barely enough to warm your hands. You began checking things compulsively. You began moving faster to feel like you were accomplishing more. You began filling every silence with stimulation, because silence, somewhere along the way, started to feel like a threat. And the mind, that extraordinary instrument you were born with, became something you could no longer fully trust. Scattered, reactive, pulling in directions you did not choose, toward things that did not matter, away from the work and the life that actually deserved your full presence. This is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of living in a world that has declared war on sustained attention. But understanding the cause does not absolve us of the responsibility to respond to it. And responding to it, reclaiming the focused, directed, sovereign mind is one of the most important acts of resistance available to us. What follows is not a productivity system. It is something older and more demanding than that. It is a set of disciplines drawn from people who faced conditions that would break most modern minds, and who emerged not merely functional, but formidable. These habits did not help them do more. They helped them become more. There is a difference, and it matters. Before we go any further, if this channel has given you even one thought that stayed with you, one idea that shifted something, subscribe to Stoic Mindshift right now. Hit the bell. What we build here, week after week, is not content. It is a body of work designed to change the way you live. Do not let the algorithm decide when you see it. Make the choice yourself. Now, let us get to work. 10 habits, 10 disciplines, one unbroken thread leading from where we are to where we are capable of being. Habit 1. Begin each day with deliberate silence. The modern morning is a siege. Before our feet have touched the floor, the phone is in our hand. Before we have spoken a single word to ourselves, we have already received the opinions, anxieties, and demands of a dozen other people. We have handed the first moments of our day, the most plastic, most impressionable moments, when the mind is still close to its own depth, to the clamor of a world that will take everything we give it and ask for more. Marcus Aurelius began differently. Each morning before the weight of empire pressed down, he wrote. Not correspondence, not policy. He wrote to himself, examining his thoughts, rehearsing his values, setting the interior tone for the day before the exterior world could set it for him. The meditations we now read as philosophy were, for him, a daily practice of deliberate self-orientation. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He was not cultivating cynicism. He was cultivating readiness. By spending the first quiet moments of his day in honest preparation, he ensured that nothing the day brought could arrive as a complete surprise to his inner self. Silence is not empty. For the person willing to sit inside it without immediately escaping, it is extraordinarily full of the thoughts we have been outrunning, the clarity we have been drowning in stimulation, the sense of self that gets lost the moment we outsource our attention to external noise. The first habit is this: 10 minutes. Before the phone, before the news, before the demands begin arriving. 10 minutes of deliberate, unstructured silence in which you are simply present with your own mind, not meditating in any formal sense. Simply being, noticing what is there, what you actually think, what you actually feel, what the day actually asks of you when you remove the static long enough to hear it. This single practice maintained consistently, changes the architecture of the entire day. The mind that has been given its first quiet hour, or even its first quiet 10 minutes, moves differently through the world that follows. More deliberately, more selectively, more itself. Habit 2. Define what deserves your attention before the world does. Attention is the currency of a life. Whatever we consistently give it to, we are, in the most literal sense, investing our existence in. And most of us have never once sat down and decided, deliberately and explicitly, what deserves that investment. Instead, we respond to the loudest voice, to the most urgent notification, to the crisis that arrived most recently, to the person who pushed hardest. We have outsourced the allocation of our most precious resource to whoever or whatever happens to press most insistently. And then we wonder, at the end of days and years, why we feel we have been busy but not purposeful, active but not alive. Seneca saw this with a clarity that has not aged a day in 2,000 years. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last, by death's final constraint, to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was passing. The second habit is the deliberate, daily act of deciding, before the day begins, before the demands arrive, what is actually important. Not what feels urgent, not what others have decided is urgent, what is actually important, according to your own values and your own deepest purposes. This requires knowing what those values and purposes are, which is itself a discipline, one that the constant noise of modern life makes almost impossible to access, which is precisely why the silence of the first habit must come before the decision-making of the second. Write it down, not a to-do list, a hierarchy. What matters most today? What is the one thing that, if it were done well, would make everything else feel secondary? Begin there. Protect that. Let the rest arrange itself around it, rather than letting the rest consume all available space and leave the important thing, again, for tomorrow. Habit 3. Eliminate the trivial with ruthlessness. There is a word the Stoics used, mnemonikon, referring to the ruling faculty of the mind, the governing intelligence that sits above the reactive impulses and directs the whole self toward what is genuinely good. The tragedy of the scattered modern life is not merely that we are distracted. It is that the mnemonikon, the directing faculty, the part of us capable of genuine focus and purposeful action, atrophies from disuse. Like any muscle, it weakens when we fail to exercise it. And we fail to exercise it every time we allow the trivial to occupy the space the essential deserves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" 3 words, devastatingly simple, almost impossible to live by, because the trivial rarely announces itself as trivial. It disguises itself as urgency, as connection, as information we might need, as entertainment we have earned. And by the time we recognize it for what it has consumed the hour we needed for something real. The third habit is active elimination, not passive reduction, active, deliberate removal of the things that consume attention without returning value. The feeds that leave you feeling emptied rather than enriched. The conversations that circle without arriving anywhere. The obligations you have accumulated through inertia rather than genuine choice. The habits of consumption, of media, of opinion, of distraction that fill the hours without filling the self. This is not asceticism for its own sake. It is the practical recognition that focus is not primarily about adding concentration techniques. It is about removing the things that make concentration impossible. The mind does not need to be forced to focus on what genuinely matters. It needs to be freed from the accumulated weight of what does not. Cut ruthlessly. And in the space that opens, something remarkable becomes possible. Habit 4. Train the body to command the mind. The ancient teachers understood something that modern neuroscience has spent decades confirming. The mind and body are not separate systems. The state of one is always reflected in the state of the other, and the person who neglects the physical instrument while attempting to cultivate the mental one is working against themselves in ways they may not fully perceive. Marcus Aurelius rose before dawn. Epictetus, despite physical disability, maintained rigorous physical discipline. The Stoics were not indifferent to the body, they were precise about it. They understood that softness in the physical life produces softness in the mental life, that the person who cannot endure physical discomfort will struggle to endure psychological discomfort, that the discipline cultivated in the body transfers, reliably and powerfully, to the mind. Seneca wrote, "Vindica te tibi," reclaim yourself for yourself. And while he meant it in the broadest possible sense, there is a physical dimension to this reclamation that cannot be bypassed. The body that is disciplined, that is moved, that is tested, that is not always given what it immediately wants, produces a mind that is more capable of the same discipline. The fourth habit is not a specific exercise regimen. It is the principle. Do something physically difficult every day. Not for aesthetics, not for performance metrics. For the transfer of discipline, for the daily proof that you are capable of doing the uncomfortable thing, the hard thing, the thing your immediate impulse resists. The cold water, the early run, the weight that is heavier than comfortable. Each of these is simultaneously a physical act and a mental one. Each one is a small proof deposited into the account of self-trust that you are someone who does not always choose the path of least resistance. That proof compounds. Over weeks and months, it becomes something you carry with you. A quiet, embodied knowledge that you are more capable than your comfort-seeking instincts suggest. And that knowledge changes the quality of your focus in ways that no technique alone can produce. Habit 5. Read with depth. Not volume. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information and unprecedented shallowness of understanding. We consume more words than any generation in human history and retain, genuinely integrate, and are transformed by fewer of them than perhaps any generation before us. We skim, we scroll, we accumulate facts without assembling them into wisdom. We read about focus while our attention skitters across the surface of the page. Seneca was direct. Distringit librorum multitudo. The abundance of books is a distraction. He was writing in the 1st century. He would find our moment almost incomprehensible in its excess. His prescription was not more reading. It was better reading, deeper reading. The kind that does not move on until understanding has been genuinely achieved. Retire into yourself as much as possible, he wrote, with those who will make you better. Keep them close to you. He was talking about books the way we talk about mentors, as presences that shape the mind through sustained intimate engagement rather than passing acquaintance. The 5th habit is to read one thing slowly rather than many things quickly, to sit with a single passage long enough to feel its full weight, to ask not merely what the author is saying, but what it means for the life you are actually living, to let the great minds of the past, and they are available to us in a way unprecedented in history, actually teach us rather than simply inform us. 20 pages. Read with full attention and genuine reflection will do more for the quality of your thinking than 200 pages read with the restless, surface-skimming speed that the modern habit encourages. The mind trained on depth carries that depth into everything else it encounters. Read slowly. Return to what matters. Let it change you. Habit 6. Embrace single-tasking as a discipline. Multitasking is a lie we have told ourselves about productivity, and the cost of the lie has been enormous. The research is unambiguous. The human mind does not perform multiple cognitive tasks simultaneously. It switches between them rapidly, at significant cost in time, energy, and error rate. What we experience as multitasking is, in cognitive terms, constant interruption. And each interruption does not merely pause the task, it requires upon return a full reorientation that carries its own overhead. Epictetus saw the mechanism without the benefit of neuroscience. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. The sequence matters. Define the task, then do the task. Not alongside 3 other tasks, not while monitoring incoming demands, not with one eye always on what might need attention next. Do the task. This is almost countercultural in its simplicity. We have built systems, professional, social, technological, that reward the appearance of simultaneous engagement and punish the deliberate single-pointed attention that actually produces quality work and genuine presence. The 6th habit is the deliberate, almost stubborn practice of doing one thing at a time. Closing the other tabs. Putting the phone in another room. Communicating to the people around you and to yourself that for this period of time, this single thing has all of you. It feels at first like moving slowly, like falling behind. The anxiety of not monitoring the other streams is real, and it takes practice to sit through it. But on the other side of that anxiety is something extraordinary. The experience of full cognitive presence, of thought that goes somewhere because it was given enough space and time to travel, of work that actually reflects what you are capable of rather than what you can produce while half distracted. This is what the ancient teachers were pointing at when they spoke of prosoche, self-attention, the gathered, directed quality of a mind that has been trained to stay where it has been placed. One thing, all the way through. Then the next. Habit 7. Use journaling as a daily act of reckoning. Marcus Aurelius did not write the Meditations to be published. There is no evidence he intended anyone else to read them. He wrote them because he needed to. Because the examined life he was committed to living required an instrument of examination more rigorous than memory or casual reflection. He used the page as a mirror, as a place to confront himself honestly, to ask whether his actions had aligned with his values, to rehearse the philosophical principles he committed to process the day's events through the lens of what he believed actually mattered. He wrote to himself with a directness he may not have permitted in any other context. You have the power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The 7th habit is the daily practice of written self-examination. Not gratitude lists, though gratitude has its place. Not achievement logs, though reflection on progress matters. But honest reckoning, where did my attention go today? And was that where I chose to send it? Where did I react when I meant to respond? Where did I compromise a value for the sake of comfort? What does tomorrow deserve from me that today did not receive? The act of writing externalizes the interior, makes visible what the mind keeps in comfortable shadow. It is much harder to maintain comfortable self-deception on a page than in the privacy of unexpressed thought. The pen demands specificity. Specificity demands honesty. Honesty over time demands change. This practice, maintained over months and years, produces something invaluable, a record of your own mind. The patterns become visible. The recurring failures become undeniable. The genuine growth becomes confirmable. And the person who can see themselves clearly, without the distortions of ego or the evasions of comfort, is the person most capable of directing that self toward something worth directing it toward. Write, every day, even briefly. Especially on the days when you feel you have nothing to say. Those are often the days with the most to discover. Habit 8. Practice the art of voluntary discomfort. Seneca prescribed it with characteristic precision. Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" He was not recommending poverty. He was recommending the deliberate, periodic practice of encountering what we fear: discomfort, deprivation, difficulty, in controlled conditions, so that its power over us is dismantled before life forces the encounter in uncontrolled ones. Most of the things that destroy our focus are, at their root, attempts to escape discomfort. We check the phone because sitting with the difficulty of a hard problem is uncomfortable. We switch tasks because sustained effort on a single demanding thing is uncomfortable. We consume rather than create because creation requires tolerating the discomfort of uncertainty, of not yet knowing, of being in the middle of something that hasn't become good yet. The 8th habit attacks this at the root. By voluntarily and regularly encountering discomfort, physical, psychological, social, we train the nervous system to recognize that discomfort is survivable, that it is not an emergency requiring immediate escape, that we can be uncomfortable and functional simultaneously, the cold shower that requires no negotiation, the fast that clarifies how much of our eating is comfort rather than hunger, the difficult conversation chosen rather than deferred, the creative work resumed after failure rather than abandoned. Each of these is a small proof, accumulated over time, that the discomfort we have been organizing our life to avoid does not actually have the power we granted it. And as that proof accumulates, the focus that was previously hijacked by discomfort avoidance becomes available. The mind that no longer panics at difficulty can stay with difficulty long enough to move through it. That is not a small thing. That is, for many of us, the missing piece. Habit 9. Guard your circle with philosophical seriousness. Epictetus said it plainly. Associate with people who are likely to improve you, not encourage you indiscriminately, not validate you reflexively. Improve you by the quality of their thinking, the integrity of their character, the seriousness with which they engage the question of how to live well. This is not snobbery. It is the honest recognition that we are, to a degree most of us underestimate, products of the environments we inhabit and the conversations we regularly have. The mind calibrates itself to its surroundings. Spend enough time in shallow conversation, and shallow thinking begins to feel normal. Spend enough time with people who think carefully and speak honestly, and something in your own thinking begins to rise to meet it. The 9th habit is the deliberate cultivation of an inner circle that takes the life of the mind seriously. This does not require finding perfect people or abandoning everyone who doesn't read philosophy. It requires noticing which relationships leave you more yourself, clearer, more honest, more awake, and which leave you less. And gradually, without drama or declared allegiance, spending more time in the former and less in the latter. Marcus Aurelius filled his private writing with gratitude for the teachers and friends who had shaped his character. The ones who had modeled patience, directness, philosophical seriousness, intellectual humility. He understood that the quality of a life is inseparable from the quality of the minds it spends time inside. Choose carefully. not coldly, but carefully. The people you give your regular hours to are, in a real sense, co-authors of the person you are becoming. Habit 10. End each day with intentional closure. The day that simply ends, that runs out of hours rather than being deliberately completed, leaves residue. Unresolved thoughts. Unexamined choices. The mental equivalent of dishes left in the sink, accumulated across days and weeks until the weight of them becomes a low-grade distraction that we carry even into sleep. Epictetus attributed this practice to the Pythagoreans before him, but it is deeply Stoic in spirit. Never allow sleep to close your eyelids after you went to bed, before you have examined all your actions of the day by your reason. Not with guilt, not with self-punishment, with honest, clear-eyed examination. 3 questions. That is all the 10th habit requires. What did I do well today, not for the praise of it, but to reinforce what is worth repeating? Where did I fall short of my own standard, not to flagellate myself, but to identify what tomorrow's practice must address? And what is the single most important thing tomorrow deserves from me? This brief nightly reckoning does something powerful. It closes the day. It prevents the mental accumulation that disrupts sleep and compromises the freshness of the following morning. It creates a clean threshold between one day and the next, a genuine completion rather than a running out of time. And across weeks and months, these small daily closures create something larger, a life that is being actively directed rather than passively accumulated. A self that is watching itself with care and adjusting with intention. A human being who, at the end of years, can look back and recognize that the time was not merely spent, but inhabited, fully, deliberately, with a kind of presence that turns an ordinary life into something worth having lived. 10 habits, 10 disciplines. Not one of them complicated. Not one of them requiring resources you do not already possess. All of them requiring the one thing that the modern world has made most scarce: the willingness to be deliberate. The focused mind is not a gift distributed to a fortunate few. It is a practice, developed through consistent, patient, sometimes uncomfortable daily discipline. It has been practiced before, under conditions far harsher than most of us will ever face. By a slave who became the greatest teacher of his age. By an emperor who governed the known world and still found the quiet hours to write to himself about who he intended to be. By men who faced exile and execution and the loss of everything, and chose, in the middle of that loss, to remain awake. We are the inheritors of that lineage. Not by bloodline, by choice, by the decision to take up these practices in whatever form fits the actual life we are living, and to do the work. The noise will not stop. The demands will not diminish. The world will continue to press, to fragment, to pull us toward the reactive and the trivial. But we will not be the same people meeting it. We are building something inside that the outside cannot reach. One habit, one day, one deliberate choice at a time. That is enough. It has always been enough. I'll see you in the next one.